cracks me up. We're going to be, I don't know why I did 4 twice. I was like 5, 4, 3, but I still held up 4 fingers.
That's interesting.
Something's wrong with me.
Some wiring issue going on.
It was really a glitch. Welcome, everybody. Today we are especially privileged to have with us a special guest, talk about go bag, car bag, get home bag. All of these fall, stuff you should have at the house. All of these things fall under the concept of preparedness.
That's right.
And all 4 of us here, including producer Leslie. Can we call you producer Leslie?
Yeah.
No, that's not...
Producer Leslie's fine.
Triggering.
What's gender non-specific?
It is, so we should be good. So we are here today to talk not just about what goes in those bags, although we're going to give everybody step-by-step instructions on that, as well as in the show notes, we will put up a specific list for a get-home bag. But we are very, very privileged to have with us today Buster Tate. Buster, you are a civilian, worked in the Pentagon for many years. You had the exciting opportunity to go to Iraq for not 1 deployment, but 2.
Mm-hmm.
And helped with the rebuilding of the infrastructure, and so maybe there may have been some passing counterintelligence ops or something like that.
There is like
to talk about.
There is a glitch on the camera right now. They can hear you.
So okay, so everybody can hear us. So we're going to keep talking, and hopefully Leslie will get us a visual.
Yeah,
because there's some exciting.
Okay.
You're doing okay.
That's just the delay.
Oh,
there's some
fine.
exciting stuff we want to show you. I mean, I have something in front of me that Buster gave me many years ago called the Zombie Apocalypse Kit. So we're going to break that out. But Buster, so you had plenty of experiences. I've had these experiences too. Some you've traveled extensively in the third world. What we have seen is what a lot of Americans have never experienced, which is that a society could go from relative peace and calm to total decay of the availability of law enforcement, water, food, and a society can be disrupted very, very quickly. You and I have both seen that. In addition to that, I remember in 1972, Agnes came to this area of the country. It was a hurricane. Flood levels we hadn't seen in a very long time. Wiped out all of the fresh water purification plants up and down the Schuylkill and Delaware rivers. And so people had no water. They had no services. One of the attorneys that works for me, her brother-in-law and sister-in-law went on a drive, got out of the car that had run off the road, tried to walk out. Husband died, wife survived. So these are things like that most of us don't think can happen, but you could have a disruption of services around here, even in a densely populated area. You know, Buster and I were talking, what if there's a snowstorm and you just wait an extra 45 minutes to head home from work? And you're on a backcountry road, and nobody's out driving around anymore.
Yeah.
So you don't think about these things, but they're real dangers out there. And so we're going to talk about all of these things, and we do. So our show notes are extensive because we have a lot of information to give you, but they're not extensive because we need a lot of prompting, because we do all of this.
That's right.
And I've made use of some of the safety devices in these bags before in a number of circumstances. So Buster, let's just talk a little bit. I mean, we've alluded to the fact that everybody wants a go bag, but that implies that they're home, something terribly wrong has gone on, and they're going to leave.
Right.
Which most of the time, I think is probably wrong thinking. Is that true from your perspective?
Well, in my mind, all preparedness is scenario-based and an assessment of risk. And so, based on what you were describing, loss of power, services. That means grocery stores can't get supplied, food's not going to be prevalent.
Yeah, people think, I just go to, around here, they go to Wegmans, Harris Teeter down south, whatever it might be. They just think I go and get some food.
And if there's no electricity, then it's only a matter of days or week or so. The grocery stores are empty, resupply is not available, and people have heard for a long time in disaster preparedness orientation, you need a go bag and then head for the mountains and survive. Well, unless you're actually a skilled survivalist, that you know how to live in the woods. I mean, you might have gone camping and been able to run down to the camp store to buy the charcoal you need.
And some butter.
And some butter.
Right.
But if you try to picture yourself living in the woods for 6-8 weeks at a whack, there's only a small percentage of people that could do that and live that long. that you have to be able to go to an area, and if you're saying go bag, go where? Have you already prepped where you're going? Is there a rally point after a disaster for your family to meet and then go to your bug out place? And is that a cabin in the woods? Is that a couple 100 miles from here? How do you get there? Do you drive as far as you go with your car and hike the rest of the
Yeah,
way?
depending on whether it's weather or marauding bands of rioters, leaving might be a really bad idea.
And so once you go through the scenarios of if you've identified a bug out place to go to, is it pre-packed with materials and food and that? Or are you going to a mountainous area where you know that there's adequate game to hunt? Are you skilled at hunting? Do you know how to clean animals to eat? Can you set traps? Are you prepared to go through that? And most folks, when they really stop and think about it, are not prepared.
Right, that answer for almost everybody that lives in an urban and suburban area is going to be no.
And so all scenario based, you have to put some parameters around it and then answer the questions. Is it a 72-hour problem or is it a 2-month problem? And more often than not, you would be better off sheltering in place with some preparation and have supplies and equipment in your home in order to do that. But then that brings up a whole range of issues that you have to think about if you're going to shelter in place.
And one of those issues, so we want to plant this idea earlier, we're going to return to it in detail, is if you're going to shelter in place, meaning your home, and a disaster, whether it's weather-related or political, a riot, an active shooter, whatever it might be. Terrorism. You have to get from where you are back to where you're going to shelter, which is why we're talking about what very few people are going to really want to go back in the traditional sense of go back. Almost everybody, we think, should have what you refer to as a get-home bag. And keep that in the office. And then everybody, based on what you're saying, should also have some stuff in the car in case you could get to your car and get home. But what if you can't? So we're going to talk about those scenarios. And then all of this is saying that when you get home, you better have some stuff there. And then there are profound questions that we'll talk about too, like what kind of self-defense are you going to have at the office, in your car, and at home? And what are the legal and non-legal ramifications?
Speaking of,
Yes.
Greg Buckley and Steve Richardson and Lisa are in, and they say
Yeah.
hi. And
Hello,
Steve
everybody.
Richardson wants to know about go bags that are NRA okay.
Yeah, so you're going to talk about weapons, I think.
Sure.
We all want to talk about weapons. And so, Steve, we are going to get to it. But again, in all likelihood, you're going to want to talk about weapons in your home and maybe something that you're using to get home.
Well, and the crux of that is that in a disaster situation, civilized society breaks down pretty quick, and that you're going to have to calculate against a mob mentality. And so if the scenario is you're in your office and say you work in a high rise and there's an earthquake or an infrastructure takedown and you've got to get back and gas stations aren't working, food's not going to be available.
And if the power grid's been affected either by a natural disaster or a bug,
there's going to be hundreds and hundreds of people in the street all trying to do the same thing. And so in that situation, you could expect that civilized society would last for some 72 hours maybe before it gets real ugly, but then mob mentality takes over and you need to be able to prepare to defend yourself.
well, I mean, these drop as podcasts weeks or a month after we do this, but right now, as we're speaking, there's an article in the news saying that in Venezuela, which is rapidly deteriorating, people are breaking into zoos and killing and eating zoo animals. So it doesn't take terribly long. I mean, I guess I've seen sort of social order disintegrate in 72 hours. So once people realize that when the food is gone from the shelves, there might not be more coming, they begin to behave in very different ways.
And in a suburban area like this, there's not much to hunt.
And I, for example, when Robin and I were in undergrad, TMI had its little incident. And, you know, there were guys with the radiation suits on taking soil samples outside of our dorms. And so the college called everybody together. And eventually they closed the college because it was very close to the reactors. But it was interesting because already, like within hours of the disaster, people were super panicked. And Walter Cronkite didn't do any favors. He's going, man toying with unnatural elements must now pay the consequences. And it freaked people out, and they had a meeting, and they were explaining where the evacuation point was going to be if they decided to evacuate, and who would come. And I kept thinking to myself, yeah, if faced with the decision of whether they should get these snotty college kids that are causing trouble in the town all the time or get their own family out. And by the way, by this time, cars are driving out of town with rocky chairs lashed to the roof and everything. So just that, I mean, people forget about that. That was within hours. People were already getting very concerned.
Well, and people at home will say, well, what's the chances of that? What's happened in the last 10 years that would be an issue? But if you look at even the news today, if North Korea actually has suitcase nukes and they want to detonate some in a local area, the EMP shuts down everything. If you're not in the kill radius, you're going to still be affected by the absence of electricity, and you need to have a plan B.
Yeah. You sound like the newspaper when TMI was going in Harrisburg. They published a map that showed a red area, which they defined as like total kill zone.
Yeah.
So if you're here, and we were just
don't worry about all this stuff. You're
just
done.
calm down.
Yeah.
I was in Bedford, Pennsylvania, just recently, and I'm going to paraphrase the sign I saw slightly, but it goes right to the point we're talking about here. If you live in Bedford, you should be prepared and maybe move to slightly higher ground because the sign says, "Listen, hey, we're sorry, but a long time ago, some folks built like an earthen dam up the valley from you. And that thing, you know, it might give way. And if it does," and then the garage where we were getting car fixed, the mechanic was watching us, and he said, "Let me save you boys some time. That thing just says if the dam breaks, you can kiss your ass goodbye." So everybody in Bedford sort of grasps the situation.
Right.
Yeah. So let's talk about something, we'll get to go bag, but let's talk about something that people really need, which is, let's put them in the office. Disaster happens. They have to get home, and then let's talk about what they have at the office, what they have in the car in case they're going to take the car, but maybe they can't, but they need this stuff in the car in case there's a weather problem.
If it's an earthquake and the infrastructure's damaged, roads aren't accessible, then you have to hike home.
Or what if you didn't take the car? What if you took public transportation?
Right.
You might be
It doesn't
open.
exist.
So let's take your sort of structure here, which is you're at the office, something has happened. You're going to do some risk assessment about whether to walk home or try to drive home or whether you can even get public transportation. But what should be in that bag no matter which of those scenarios is taking place? This is a get-home bag.
Well, and that goes back to the basic premise. All preparedness is scenario-based risk assessment. So if you're in a high-rise building, first, if there's an earthquake or something like that, you've got to get out of the building. And oftentimes you've got damaged hallways, could be fire. And so a lot of times people forget that you need to be able to cover your mouth and breathe. And so the masks, eye protection, and generally some tools in order to escape a damaged infrastructure.
And we can show people, you have a bag there that is a get-home bag. I have a ready-made sort of lightweight get-home bag here. And what you're talking about, so this one comes, and interestingly enough, with work gloves. I put a pry bar in here, which there wasn't before. Here are, the eye goggles that you're talking about, and a respirator mask in here. So, you don't need a ton of space. What I don't like about this pre-made one is I like the contents of it, although they're all lightweight, but as a get-home bag, which is not a total disaster, and assuming it's not going to take you more than a couple days to walk home, you could live with this. What I don't like about it is something that you've cured there, and I have my own heavy version of it, which is this worries me. This thing that it's in is cheap.
The material is flimsy.
And what do we say about cheap?
Yeah, it's your enemy here.
In this environment, you don't want to skimp on tools and materials. You want to get high-end stuff that you can depend on in a crisis that will stand up to some heavy-duty work. But one of the most important things in a get-home bag is a proper pair of boots. That you don't want to try to walk home in dress shoes and navigate, torn up areas in something that you're trying to walk around in the office with.
And if you took public transportation, you don't have a car, you can't just leave these in the car. So I agree with Buster that heavy-duty shoes, rather than dress shoes, should be sitting next to. Do you want to show them your get-home bag, Buster? Because yours looks, that one looks more like the one I actually have.
And this is a heavy bag from Echo Sigma. They do a good job at some of the pre-prep. I've added some additional heavy gloves that have padding for the knuckle and the palms.
Again, you might have to move concrete.
Yeah, or in a survival situation, you don't want to get any kind of, even small cuts on the hands can become infected and very quickly become a problem.
I can prove that actually by something that I want to do.
And so in there, you have to, and when you're doing your risk assessment, when you're planning the bag, is how far do you have to go? And how far can you go in the course of a day?
Right.
And so if you are 25, 30 miles away from your house, you're likely going to end up having to stay a night en route to get home, depending on how rough the terrain is.
And possibly two.
And possibly two. And so in here, you need to have food, water, shelter, in order to go the distance that you know, and you need a little extra because in this kind of an environment, lots of unforeseen things actually happen. And you can pack a lot of gear in pretty short order.
Now, Steve Richardson, pay attention to this because both Buster and I have, I mean, what's yours weigh? Mine weighs, even with the weapons in it, about...
this is less than 30 pounds.
Yeah.
This is 3 to 5 days of food.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to like it, but it will keep you alive. And you can get very compact emergency tube tents that will allow you to create some shelter, sleeping bags, and other things that you can pack compactly that will survive 2 or 3 days. This would not last for 8 weeks in the woods,
right,
but this will get you home, which is really the purpose of this particular thing.
You could get, like this one has emergency purified water. We have links for all of this stuff, including this firm. Some of these are affiliate links, but we just got plenty of links that aren't too.
Yeah.
And this bag also carries 3 liters of water.
Yeah, and I've got actually 2 liters in there.
But one of the things that I like best are these headlamps.
Mm-hmm.
That when you're walking and you're having to work with tools and move around, the headlamp is more functional than trying to carry a flashlight. But one of the most important rules in all of this is redundancy. You need more than one of everything. The basic rule of thumb for Boy Scouts on up is 2 is 1, 1 is none.
Right.
You've got to have a replacement or alternatives if something fails or something breaks or it's lost.
Now, I can hear people saying, holy cow, I mean, if I've got to have 2 of everything, it's going to be so heavy that I can't move around. But what, like, for example, with you have a headlamp and a torch here, which
Yes,
I do
right.
too. I do both the same thing. So if this failed, that would do the
You
trick.
still have a light.
Doesn't add a lot. Water. I carry purified water. I have a lice straw in a bag like this where I'm not going for a long time. If in the car, I probably have a hand pump with a filter on it. So I have 2 ways of getting water. I have water. Also, this is probably not necessary for a get-home bag. For in the car, for you might be stranded longer. It's certainly not a bad thing. This is Chlorflock. Have you ever used it, Buster?
I have not.
So this, you could put kind of dirty water in here. It'll even settle it out too, and it'll kill. This kills Giardia, bacteria, and viruses. And so any water purification you want that'll handle viruses. So I have waterproof matches and a lighter. So 2 ways to start a fire, or a striker. I have water that I'm carrying with me with 2 ways to purify it. So I have a headlamp and a flashlight. I have a knife and a pry bar that's got a sharpened blade on it, or you might have a shovel, a foldable shovel in there.
Well, the shovel that we were talking about is too big for that.
For that, yeah.
This
This is
is
one of my favorites.
my BK3. This is my favorite knife. It's not a Rambo fighting knife. This is a tool that will get you out of a building, allow you to work in
Open a door.
open doors. This is designed for cutting seatbelts or lines. It's got a very nice blade and a saw on it. The tip is for prying, but this is over maybe 1.3 pounds.
We have a link for this, Leslie, which is
Yep,
the
it's going up.
PK3. Yep.
Yep.
Yeah,
And
beautiful
everybody
thing.
should have one of these in their get-home bag, have one of these in their car, and have it accessible from your driver's seat, that you can break glass with a handle. Like I said, this is an excellent seatbelt cutter. You just pull and draw. And in a pinch, if you had somebody in the head with this, they're going down.
Yeah.
And so this is, and I have a lot of knives and a lot of the fancy looking, like scary stuff. This is still my favorite knife.
a super valuable multi-tool. Now, people are maybe going to say, what's this about cutting the safety belt? So let's talk to them, because a lot of people die this way.
In a car accident, oftentimes the seat belts will lock up, doing their job by keeping you from propelling through the windshield, but then you can't get them out. And so you have to have a way to cut yourself out of the seat.
Especially if you're sinking.
Or if there's a fire building.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's lots of opportunity. And so, actually, we're transitioning from get home into car bags. But a lot of this is overlap, and I think that the links that Dave is putting on the meeting notes has fundamental equipment that you need, whether it is in a car or in your office. This bag I keep in my office, and if something goes bad, then I can grab that. If my car's accessible, I've got more gear there,
right.
So that's even more redundancy,
Yeah.
and I can help somebody else, and I can keep moving. But having the BK3 and the stuff that I'm describing is good in both areas. The other thing that I believe is critical in both bags is some kind of an escape tool. You know, this is not like a wood hatchet, although it would serve that purpose. This is to cut through metal or doors or other kinds of things. You can poke a series of holes with this spike and then use the blade to connect the holes and then make passage. And so you can go through the roof of a car or chop your way through a windshield. Now, most glass breakers will get you out of a window, a glass door, but going through a window or windshield is a problem. And so you need something a little more heavy duty.
I want to keep going with the contents of this, but you also alluded to something else, which is depending on how much you have, you might be able to more easily help other people.
Well, helping other people is a deep subject in itself.
And we're going to touch on it, but it is a deep subject.
That, you know, you can be prepared to help you, but depending on the number of people that you're trying to support, you can exhaust your resources quickly and everybody fail. That if you tried to feed 7 people with your 3 days of supplies, you'll be done in a day. And so you have to be conscious about what that means and what you're prepared to do. Or if you're in an office environment, do you try to get your office mates to also be prepared so that in a situation you're not feeding on each other in order to stay alive?
Yeah, that's really the message here, is that you don't want to run out of food because you're trying to help people, because then everybody's dead.
Right.
Or everybody's perishing because they're not prepared and you're staying. So the real trick to this is to get neighbors to try to prepare,
Right.
and to get co-workers to try to prepare and have, you know, it's just good for them to be prepared.
Well, it's good for you, for them to be prepared.
Right, because then you don't have to face the issue of, what if they come for the food?
Yeah.
That's the other thing that we're not talking about here, but people could go bad fast. What if they come for the food? Then what does that force you to decide?
And that's more in the get home or once you're home conversation.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
a whole nother
So
round.
we're sort of leaping ahead, but we can keep going on the contents and not
I
to
think that's
worry.
worthy. You know, most of the people watching are, you know, professional practice entrepreneur types.
Mhm.
Well, you know, maybe your team needs to get on board with this for your own preservation. But like, I work in a small office, at most there's 7 people there.
Mhm.
It would be pretty easy for me to get those 7 people educated enough that they could.
So I think that's what we're saying, is having a series of meetings on this and maybe helping people
Emergency
and having
action plans,
resources. Showing them how to do planning. So doing this in your business, here's what happens, is that if you don't plan on this, a part of you knows deep down that this could be a serious problem.
Right.
And it nags at you. So being prepared frees up that part of your brain that's worried about that. But personally being prepared, you still have this nagging worry. So getting everybody else in your office prepared, you get a benefit from that too. Which
Right.
is that you're helping them, but also it frees
So,
up the
so
worry.
the argument is, you know, come on, Dave, come on, Buster. Like, the statistical chance of something like this happening is very, very low. Why do I need to spend all this money and all this time on it?
So it's the same thing for a car accident, right?
Right.
Or your house catching on fire. And yet everybody that's going to say that to you will have purchased insurance for that catastrophe.
Exactly.
But it's the same argument with a gun. Better to have one and not need it than need it and not have one.
Yeah, now that's another thing that people are going to ask. What about weapons here? So we've shown a number of tools that you should have here, any one of which could be used as a weapon, all of which will be ineffective against someone with a gun.
Correct. And so, I kind of go back to Jocko's podcast when he talked about self-defense, that Som is a certified badass, but the rationale of self-defense comes down to, if you really want to practice self-defense, get a gun and practice with it. Because there's always going to be somebody bigger or more aggressive or multiple people that even a badass can't defend against. And so when I think about weapons for transition work, like from get home or once you get home and you're in protection mode, I like the Glocks because they're simple, very, very reliable. And then when you start talking about calibers, I like the 9mm because in a zombie apocalypse environment, as you encounter people and you either have to agree to pass on or engage, if you engage, you're likely going to be engaging with somebody else with a 9mm. You kill them, take their ammunition, and move on.
That's a very common.
Yeah. But I mean, it'll be the most prevalent ammunition available. Yeah. I didn't mean to say that in a bad way.
No, and listen, we acknowledge that there's a variety of views on the weapons, but Buster's right in this sense. If you want to be prepared for any eventuality, we're also not suggesting that if you thought about it, you could show them, Buster.
Well, no, I was just going to get it up. I have to do this for Command Sergeant Major Johnson, Larry Johnson, that the weapon is safe. I need a confirmation.
The weapon is safe, sir.
Very good. And it is a simple weapon. Many of them have safeties and buttons and things to work with. And I don't want to start a Glock argument in an environment like this. But for stress situations, when you have multiple functions to do, the reason I like the Glock is the safeties are built into the trigger. You can drop it and it won't go off. And you don't have to worry about, is it on safe? Is it loaded? And just from a carry perspective, it should always be carried in and active.
Mm-hmm. So you're raising a host of issues here. The first is people will make this decision for themselves. Sure. Am I going to have a gun in this scenario or not?
Right.
The next thing is, if you've made that decision, you have an absolute moral responsibility to yourself, your family, your neighbors, everybody else, to train with this thing. Because Buster, Sam, and I have all met people who've bought guns, have never fired them. And then we've also met people who train properly. They get some training, but it's always at the range. They've never unholstered the weapon and shot it. And most people don't understand what it's going to be like to fire a weapon in, like, if you've talked about the scenario during the middle of the night when you wake up and you hear somebody and all of a sudden, boom.
But see, people don't understand what stress does to the body. And
it's the field of vision.
In a window breaks at 3 o'clock in the morning and you grab your gun, your major motor functions are gross. The fine ones are very difficult to maintain. And so getting the perfect sight picture and all that is almost impossible if you haven't practiced enough where you're totally comfortable with that. And so we're really kind of all over the map in terms of, we've already done it.
I think it's all part of the preparation, right?
Yeah.
One is, the physical stuff that you need to have, right? Then it's the practice of, knowing where it is and how to deploy it. And then I have that knowledge, I have the physical skill, I have the material, but if you haven't inoculated yourself to the stress of the situation, which most people never put themselves under, right? We do the same things routinely every day, day in, day out. You don't have the stress of the unknown, right? Think about how much people get thrown off just when there's a bad weather forecast.
Yeah.
Right?
Or even if you're at the range and if people just shoot at a static target, if you put the target in a flip face where you've got 1.5 seconds to shoot back, just that much stress to shoot in a quicker time will have them throwing and slapping the trigger and pulling heavy to the left. So practicing under duress will allow you to understand what your limitations are and be prepared to address that.
Yeah. So there's this whole process that you go through, which is learning gun safety, then learning how to shoot, then learning how to shoot well, then learning how to shoot under stress. But I will say, whether or not you've made the decision to get a gun, all of what we're talking about is true of all the rest of the equipment in the bag. I mean, you said
that same continuum is true for unarmed self-defense, if you're going to use a knife, or just deploying any of these tools we have here.
And so one of the things you'll see in the list of things we're going to give you, in addition to what we're showing you and telling you about here, is that, for example, in this field trauma kit, and which I have in my full go bag, there's a clotting agent in here, there's a bunch of things in here. There's a first aid manual in there. The first time you look at that first aid manual, or cards about what you can eat, should not be when you're trying to get home. The knife should not still be in the big plastic wrapper.
The blister pack.
Yeah, the batteries should be checked periodically to
Right.
make sure they haven't gone. There's a process to this, but it relates to what you're talking about with any weapon, applies to everything in the bag.
Yeah.
Like this filtration system, look, it's in the bag. Now I happen to be familiar with this one, but so I'm pretty comfortable leaving this in here. But if you've never used this system or you've never used a life straw, you better buy yourself an extra life straw and have one that you're practicing with, and that, so that you understand. You should not be reading the instructions when you come upon a dirty puddle while you're trying to get home. So,
And this is like taking a first aid class and emergency medical procedures. And depending on the scenarios that you're in, if you're potentially going to be in a gunfight or you may end up scratched or hurt pretty bad, you need to be able to do that, and you need to be able to self-administer as well. Because if you're alone trying to get home from the office or wherever you're at, in many cases, you're your only backup.
So, interestingly, the first time I was exposed to all this piece that we're talking about, and you do this at Paw Paw Camp that you run for your grandkids at home, but I was exposed to these things in Boy Scouts. And then that's where I took my first survival training, my first first aid training. Now, you know, I continued on and had other scenarios where I was exposed to it in a more advanced way, but just exposing yourself to it in some setting, taking a class in first aid, taking a class there are such classes in developing the skills of using these items. Very, very valuable. So let's keep going. We're still in the get home bag. We are going to review. We need a really good pair of boots. We need a first aid kit. We can talk.
And you need to be familiar with it, like you just said.
And we should probably talk about what should be in there. So in mine, I do have a first aid manual because there might be times when I want to refer to it, but taking a class. I have multiple clotting agents. So if you have a serious wound or somebody has a serious wound you come across, you can stop that bleeding. I have gauze, I have bandages, I have adhesive tape, I have safety pins, I have, there's a long list that we're going to provide. But you should be constantly doing a review of this, to make sure the stuff in there isn't expired and that you've got what you need.
Well, and what I find is that people that put these bags together, if their kid gets hurt and they have to get some Band-Aids out or stuff, you could deplenish your emergency supplies. So pay attention to that.
Yeah, exactly. So just be looking at it. It's not what you create. So we should have some water. We should have some purified water in there, some shelf-stable water. We should have some food. You showed a food that was noxious. You could even do some protein bars or something like that. But you want something that's going to be super calorie dense, because if you're out 1 or 2 days or 3 days getting home, you need to have a few thousand calories a day if you're going to be active. You've mentioned you want a blanket or some kind of sleeping gear. You want to be able to pitch a tent or create some kind of cover if the weather's bad.
Or building a shelter. And in all of these bags, you need a roll of 550 paracord. And it is multi-purpose that you can fray the cord, and there's generally 7 strands inside the 550 cord that can also be used for a variety of things. You can build shelter with that, and depending on your go bag, I keep a saw in mine in order to saw limbs for firewood, or if I needed to build shelter. With that and some cord, you can build a log cabin.
And you have a sort of a redundant saw on your K-bar.
Well, and this is just a knife for any kind of bushcraft, that you can have a saw with a blade for notching, cutting. A knife is just an invaluable tool in any environment. And you can do an evaluation on all the different knives or what kind of knives are best for bushcraft. I can tell you, I like the SOG products. They're good material. The blades are easily sharpened and maintained. But if you get into this, there's a level of prepper stuff that can go into a deep, dark rabbit hole. And that's why I'm saying all of this risk assessment is really based upon the percent of risk you apply to it. You're likely to experience some kind of natural disaster or earthquake or whatever at some point in your life. Whether we get nuclear attacked, probably a lower probability. But you just have to decide what's going to go on.
An infrastructure attack on the grid, more likely, probably.
Yeah.
I think a virus implanted to take out the electrical grid either on the entire East Coast or deeper is a very real possibility. That, someone gets in and takes all of that down, and then all of the civil society things we talked about. Banks won't work, can't get your money, can't get food. What you going to do? Now you can get home.
Yep.
And then once you're home, if you've got yourself set up, then it's all the things we've been talking about. What do you do with your neighbors? How do you help other people that aren't prepared? And how does that go?
And let's just finish a quick review of that get home bag too. So I like, in addition to having some water, because you need a lot of water, and water weighs 8 pounds per gallon.
Yeah.
So you can only carry so much. I like to have a life straw or some kind of filtration system, and I like to have the chloroflock.
Yeah.
And do we have a link for that?
I put up all the links. So we have one for the BK3, one for the portable water filter, one for the water for purification, chlora, and emergency survival water pouch.
Good. So all of these things, those are just the basics. You want to have a knife, you want to have gloves, you want to have
Gotta have duct tape.
food, you gotta have duct tape. I like to have some safety pins in there. I like to have paracord, that's gotta be in there, 550. The goggles for protection, a blanket of some kind or something.
We're also
like that.
giving away the flashlight today. Don't forget that.
Oh, tactical flashlight. Yeah. We have a tactical flashlight. So let's take a pause and say, if you would like to win the tactical flashlight, which we have as a giveaway today, all you have to do is share the video, tell Leslie that you did it, and they just, all they have to do is message you, I guess.
Yeah. Message in top form.
Yep. Or we'll also enter anybody that did that last week and this week, or gave us a 5-star or other review on in Top Form's podcast over on iTunes.
Yeah, and there are some extra ones to listen to.
Yeah, some new episodes. I think we're up to
ones are up.
We're up to 18 or something like that. Episode 18.
Yeah, and I'll have 4 new ones next week.
So if you'd like to win that tactical flashlight, so you need to go buy one less item.
Yeah.
Just to share this video. So also while we're pausing, let's just mention Business Black Ops.
Yeah.
The special one VIP Elite, where there's just 4 companies. I think we're either full or we have 1 spot left.
Seat left.
So if you want to grab that seat where you're going to spend time with just 3 other people, and me and a little team that I put together.
And that's only open to BBO attendees.
Right, it's people that are coming to Business Black Ops. So if you haven't already registered, there are, I think, still 5 spots available for Business Black Ops.
Yeah.
Yep. And so that is, just go to 3daystosuccess.com or call Lisa at 610-933-8069. So that's great. Thank you. Thanks for reminding me, Leslie. Tactical flashlight.
That's what I'm here for.
So another thing to think about is navigation. I think a lot of us take that for granted because you just plug it in your phone and nobody knows how to read maps anymore.
Ooh, compass. Yeah, thank you. I do have a compass in my...
But he's on the right track. Is you need also a physical map.
Yeah.
And I always keep a physical map in my car in case satellites go down or GPS is no longer functioning.
Yeah, and I mean, I grew up in this area, so I have a pretty good sense if I'm here, where I'm going is east or west or north or south.
But back to your earlier comment, all of this for me is, I'm just an older Boy Scout. This is all foundational that I grew up with. And the Boy Scout motto was be prepared.
But my point also being is like we used to have to know how to get places. Now you don't, right? So like before you went anywhere, you pulled up a map or at least printed out the directions.
Look for the milestone where you're going to turn.
Exactly. Now people just listen, turn left, turn right, and they don't actually know how to get anywhere. Younger people.
And the basic concepts of orienteering, understanding how far your step is, and measuring that in relation to, okay, this to walk a mile is going to take me 3,000 steps.
Right.
So I agree. Having a compass without a intimate knowledge of the topography and the orientation of what's where is going to be a problem for most people, or if you didn't grow up in that area. But even if you did, if your route takes you into unfamiliar territory, having a map is a really good idea. I like to have topo maps where I'm going as well. Oh, very nice.
I
have them in my bag too.
I like the heavy
Yours
duty
are super heavy duty.
Well, in case you have to restrain someone.
That's yeah. I have a good story about that. So, by the way, just so everybody knows, because we're talking about this, but we're not showing it, Buster has just taken out some super mil-spec level zip ties, which look like they could be used for a variety of things. But these look like restraints.
They're fasteners.
Yeah, they're fasteners. And I also like having one of these in case you need to build a shelter.
Folding saw.
Or cut through, make some firewood.
Steve Richardson wants to know, how about battery charger for cell phones, etc.? Towers won't necessarily be down and GPS functions can be from satellites.
That's what he thinks. Steve, just keep telling yourself that. So,
yeah, solar flare, though, would get rid of all of that. So.
Yeah.
There's always that.
So Steve is right in this sense that, you could have a number of disasters that would still leave that kind of communication intact, but I wouldn't plan on it for sure. So I do have a solar recharger in mind, which is about this big, and you just sit it out in the sun and it charges the battery.
Yeah. And there's also a stove about the size of this glass that the heat generates electricity that you can plug in a USB port. And you just burn a few sticks and it will recharge your phone.
So you can also, like if you really need to charge your phone, if you can find a 9-volt battery and those just like cigarette USB chargers, you just break it open and then you can rig it to, it's just 2 wires, right? Rig it to a 9-volt battery as well.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Of course, leave it to an engineer to come up with that. I'm sure everybody's just say like, oh yeah, you just rig it.
Well, so what you can do as well is like, if you leave it intact, right? You take a metal key, put the metal key next to it, so that becomes your negative, and then the point of the cigarette lighter charger goes on the positive. That will complete your circuit, and you plug your phone in.
Interesting. I hadn't thought about that. 9-volt battery charge, but
I just put it on your tongue.
And the problem with the solar charger is that once you use that charge up, which is usually for the particular one I have, it's about this big. So I'm showing something about the size of this or a deck of cards. By the way, in this formatted get home bag that I bought, there's a deck of cards in there. So they're assuming you're going to have like fun with friends.
Or solitaire.
Yeah, it could be solitaire.
I like a good pair of heavy duty scissors that will cut through and do a lot of stuff. And every bag should have a multi-tool in your car, in your get home, all over the place. Anywhere you're going, you got to have them.
Whose product is that? So I have Leatherman.
And I like Leatherman. This is actually a SOG, and it's got the spring-loaded stuff, and it's a good quality. This is small and light.
Yeah.
I like the bigger ones, but if you're in a get-home situation and you're trying to get through doors, you may have to take the screws off the hinges or do other kinds of stuff, and so you need to have that with you and accessible.
So I do. I have a Leatherman in my get-home bag and in the car. So
I have a Gerber always in my pocket.
Gerber, that's a nice tool too, the one you have there. So Leslie's waving around. You just reached into your pocket. Like, what's it? Now, did you bring that just for today, or do you have that in your pocket?
No, I always have it in my pocket. On sets, you always need to tweak things, Yeah. So you always are rigging things, and you'll see it in everybody's pockets on sets.
One of my favorites, we just crossed into an everyday carry situation.
Yeah.
This is my everyday carry little multi-tool.
Oh, that's
It's
great.
a Leatherman. It's got the knife, the pliers, and the stuff, but it's very small. It's not tremendously bulky, and I probably do use this every single day, and it's with me all the time. So
you could use that, I'm sure, for everything from like opening packages and bottles too.
Yeah, and it's got bottle opener and screwdriver and all that kind of stuff.
For ladies, they also make hair clip ones that you stick in your hair, and they've got a saw in it. They've got a little measuring stick and just some other little tools that just snaps right into your hair.
You didn't mention lockpicks.
Yes, so that's everyday carry for me. In fact, now that you're mentioning it. Now, in most emergency situations, you might be more likely just to use that K-bar or another tool and take it out. But this is and I usually have more than one set on me. This is a really nice set because it's titanium. So at Business Black Ops this year, everybody's going to learn to pick locks, and the transparent locks just came in.
Oh, nice.
So people can see it. So I do carry 2 sets of lock picks with me. I carry me when I fly and internationally. Only once has anybody ever, through the X-ray, said, "Is that what I think it is?" I said, "Yeah, I grew up in a rough neighborhood." And she just chuckled. And but Buster, you make the point that you may want to, depending on the circumstances, get into something to get food or water. You may be able to get into a building if you're skilled at raking without having to, damage it or something like that.
Other thing, depending on if you're going to just be out for a couple of days, the sharpness of your knife will be fine. If you're going to be out for a more extended period of time, you should carry a small sharpener with you.
So I have that in the car bag, but not in the go bag.
And that's something to consider is the weight. If you've got to walk home, then it's more critical elements to carry. If you're in a car bag, you can be a little more generous. Like in my car, I have my bag, but I also carry spare tarps, ponchos, materials that can be used for a variety of things because I've got the room, and weight's not so much an issue.
So again, one of the things that I like about the various size bags, I have a waterproof North Face bag here. That is the car bag. Since I think we've done a pretty reasonable review. Do we still have more articles for the Get Home bag, Buster?
I think we're good.
John wants to know about polar fleeces.
Yeah, so layering, and I do have, so this is a car bag. So here, again, we can be more generous. We have more and different kinds of tools and a bigger, set of tools and more rope and binoculars and gloves. And so that one, though, which is waterproof, can also, I can wear it as a pack. Even this smaller version, which was originally a shooting bag, and I use it as my field trauma bag. This has almost everything in it, like a small light version of it. This can, in addition, be worn as a backpack. So just remember, if you're getting a Get Home bag, quality really matters. Size matters because you got to fit a lot of this stuff in, but it can't fall apart on you. So this one, which I ordered as a Get Home bag, it has everything in it that it needs. Quality's not that great, but it's not horrible. But I would probably use this as just a sort of supplemental in the car. Yeah. I wouldn't actually try to wear this one to get home. So now let's get to, we have about 10 minutes left. Let's get to what happens when you get home. So this raises a host of situations. So if it's a snowstorm and your car goes off the road, and you have stuff in your car so you could survive overnight in inclement weather, and somebody comes along and helps you the next day and you get home, that's not what we're talking about. But if you got a 2-day or a 3-day weather event, probably not a problem. But if you've got infrastructure down and or grid down, where you're looking at a 5-day to 2 or 3 months problem, I like having, I have a Berkey water filter here. So that if water wasn't coming out of the tap, I could go get some and filter it in relatively large quantities. Right. I have things like this that could go in the car. Like this meal could be heated up. It could be heated up on its own. Right. These are chef 5-minute meals, by the way. Healthy and awesome for you?
Oh, yeah.
No. Keep you alive and sort of able to get through a couple of days while you get other things taken care of. But here at home, let's talk about what we have. So let's go up to the line of weapons first. So I have water for quite an extended period of time for 2 people. I have food that's long shelf life food for probably 3 months for 2 people. I have all of these things that we've talked about in the Get Home bag or Go bag. I have all of those here, so I have redundancy. Because if I'm doing it right and I happen to be here when there's a problem, all that stuff's at the office.
Right.
Now, if my car happens to be here, great. So I have redundancy again. But anything and everything that Buster talked about here, I have in a big box of stuff. Yep. So what else would you make sure that you had up to the line of weapons again? Then we can talk about that.
The ability to make heat.
Here. Yep,
And
fire.
so, you know, is there a fireplace, an actual fireplace, not a gas one that would choke you to death if you tried to use it? So how do you heat yourself and where do you sleep? You know, you can sleep in your bedroom with adequate blankets down to pretty cold.
Mm-hmm.
But then fire for cooking, where do you have access to wood?
Mm-hmm.
In some areas where there's not many trees left, actual material to burn is going to become scarce.
I have, for example, a grill. One of the redundancies I have is I have a gas grill I usually keep multiple propane tanks, and on that grill is a burner. Then I have the camp stove fuel.
Yep.
So I have at least, so that if everything else isn't working and the electricity's down, I have at least 2 ways of heating food.
Right.
The other thing people don't consider is medicine. That if you have for diabetes or blood pressure or whatever,
This is a great point.
you need to have some reserve available because the pharmacy's not going to be open. You're not going to be able to get it. And if you depend on that for daily existence, you need to have an emergency supply.
I have tinned food too. I guess it's not tinned anymore, but I have canned food. And so vegetables, for example, they have water in them.
Right.
So what I do is I rotate that because we give Tucker vegetables with his regular dog food. So as they get a little bit older, I rotate those off the shelf. Yeah, and then I buy new stuff. So I do have canned food as well, which is a source of water.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else you would have at home, or should we get into the weapons, which again raises these kinds of issues? If you're sheltering in place, and we're talking about a longer term event that's kind of beyond a week until you recover. I mean,
And we have a generator, just a gasoline generator.
but when you run that screams out, "Hello,
Absolutely.
come and get me."
Yeah, if lights are visible, people are going to come knock it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing is salt. That's something that a lot of people don't think about, but you should always have on hand is extra salt
I do have
for keeping either meats
Preserving
or
food.
preserve everything from melting snow to preserving things.
Yep.
That's gonna be the first thing that goes.
So we've got, for the home, we've got everything that we have on the list that we're going to provide to you. We have food to get you through short-term emergency. Then we have long shelf life food to get you through a longer period of time. You want a more robust water filtration system than Life Straw, because you don't want to be going out and trying to find so Berkey or something like that. So that brings us to this whole idea. You have generator because if it's a short term, like here, I was away one time, power was down for 5 days. And Robin stated the house temperature got below freezing.
Yeah.
So there's at a certain point, you're going to get pipes breaking and things like that. But if you have a generator, you can prevent that kind of stuff. And assuming law enforcement and civilization is still in place, you can run your generator.
Yeah.
But if you have a longer term event, what Buster and I have seen is that sometimes people panic, and then once enough of them are panicking, it spreads like wildfire.
And then it becomes a mob mentality.
Yeah.
And it's either 2 or 3 neighbors band together and start attacking the others for resources, or that people come from outside of your area looking at you as targets of opportunity for supply.
Mm-hmm. So that's a worst case scenario, obviously, but it raises the issue again of what do you have for something. We're just raising it to get people thinking about it, because it's not something that most people think about, because we're lucky in this country that we haven't had political instability, and most of the natural disasters we have had are relatively short-lived for most of the people that are affected by it. Now, I realize that in New Orleans and some of the areas in
It's a
the...
perfect example of people getting out of control.
And it's lasted a really long... Like, the problems have lasted a really long time. But what it also raises is the answer that most people give to this, which is everything's going to be fine and the government's going to be there and take care of us. And that was not the case there.
Right.
And I think it's silly to rely upon it. So just having a discussion with your family and with your friends and with your neighbors and your coworkers about being more prepared. Like, the more people in your neighborhood that are prepared, the less likely you are to be horribly negatively impacted by it.
But you said something that triggered a thought is, in a disaster situation, you and your family may be in separate places. And so, depending on the circumstances, you need to either have an agreed upon plan to return home or a designated rally point. And so depending on where they work, where you work, where your kids are, you all need to have an agreed upon way, because communication may go down immediately.
Right.
And so they know if this, then, and everybody's in on the plan, then you can act accordingly.
So we have just a few minutes left. Buster, this has been awesome. Couple of strategic things, points I think you've made, are that all of these things depend on your personal risk assessment and aversion. They're going to, the list that we're going to provide you, which we'll review just really quickly here at the end, is going to be dependent on your geography and some of your personal sort of risk assessment. Like, do you live close enough to home that no matter what, you could almost certainly walk home in a day?
Right.
Your pack is going to look different than somebody's that's going to possibly take them 3 days through a different kind of terrain. And when I talk about geography, are you in an urban geography, a suburban geography, a very agrarian geography, a wilderness geography? And what do you have to pass through to get home? It's going to look different.
Yeah, is your office in a high-rise? Are you on the 66th floor?
Mm-hmm. And then again, home, you know, are you in an apartment? Are you in a house? Are you in a rural area? How much of this stuff that you need and that you're going to depend upon depends on your assessment of the risk and what you're capable of storing. Like somebody that has a home in a basement is going to be able to do more than somebody that doesn't. Couple of the quick things that we just want to review. Any go bag, get home bag, car bag should probably have all of these things. Should be, well, for a get home bag, a compact but very sturdy backpack. And as Buster says, cheap is your enemy here. At least some water and some kind of hydration system.
And I like to use the rule of 3 when thinking about this kind of thing, that you can survive 3 hours in freezing cold without shelter. You can survive 3 days without water, 3 weeks without food. And so, you know, when you think about your circumstances, you prioritize things. You've got to be able to shelter yourself. You got to be able to get water. Food is less important, but will become critical depending on your circumstances.
Yeah. But water, people underestimate by a long shot how fast.
And under stress and inactive motion, you'll become dehydrated even quicker.
So you want to have some provisions in that bag and in the car. So food ration bars or these Metrex bars, or we'll post a bunch of things, but you're looking for things that are super calorie dense.
Yeah.
400 calories, have a fairly high level of protein. You want probably to have a compass, a map of the area from where your office is to where your home is, an emergency blanket, magnesium fire starter, or a lighter, and
people, you know, people go to a lot of lengths to try and, you know, start fires with ferro rods and other stuff. Big lighters are very dependable.
Yeah.
If you've got one or two, you're going to be okay.
Yeah. But having a little redundancy is
absolutely
good. And again, big lighter, super light. You have a second one in there, not too worried about that weight.
Right.
50 inches of duct tape, bare minimum. I
scoff at that. I know.
I thought that was funny too. Water purification tablets. I like this Chloroflock that we talked about, but there are a number of them. Just be sure that it's going to take care of virus as well, because otherwise you can end up being sick. I like chemical light sticks. You have them in yours too. You carry them in yours?
And you can use them for marking, or if you need to let people know where you are, and there's multiple functions.
I do make sure that I have some waterproof paper, a regular tablet, a couple of pens. They recommend here at your site the earplugs. I'm not sure why they have those in there, and I don't have them in mine. Do either of you guys have them? I don't know what that. I don't know why Echo Sigma is suggesting that.
Well, earplugs, depending if you're coming out of a building and there's explosions and that kind of junk. There's not too many. Well, I'm not sure I can make a good case.
Yeah,
if you're getting in a firefight, I actually prefer to have your protection.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, it's one of those things, like, you probably needed the earplugs in before the incident.
Exactly.
A first aid kit of some kind, and we're going to give you a set of the contents, but certainly scissors, tweezers, a first aid card or first aid manual.
And there's a difference between bumps and bruises and actual wounds.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so if you're in a dangerous environment, or you're construction, crawling through metal and you're getting cut up, you're going to need clotting material and ability to address that.
I don't know that they have quick clotting here. It's expensive, but it's really worth getting.
You heard me talk about the Israeli bandages.
Yep.
If you Google Israeli bandage, we didn't put that in the list, but it should be.
Yep.
That it's an awesome product that they make that has clotting agent built into the dressing, and it's very multi-purpose. You can use it for belly wounds and wrap around, or you can do it on individual, and it will secure head wounds. It's got multiple ways to adjust the bandages. It's very functional.
I like that product a lot. You would take some regular plastic bandages, alcohol swabs, wet wipes, antiseptic swabs, sting relief swabs, pain relief tablets. I just have a little bottle of
Motrin or something.
Yeah, some kind of analgesic in there, sterile gauze pads, gauze roll, sterile abdominal dressing, but again, if you had Israeli bandages, you wouldn't need it. I have a couple of rolls of tape in there. And then, again, they're saying access to exclusive online training videos if you buy one of their bags. That's really saying what we've been saying all along.
Yeah.
Take a first aid course, familiarize yourself with the cards. If you're going to carry a weapon, take a shooting course, safety course, but then shoot regularly and periodically train yourself to shoot under circumstances.
I think that's so key to remember. Is like all skills are perishable.
Yep.
So you have to stay up to date.
And all of this comes down to also having the right mindset going into it. How far are you prepared to go? I know some people that could not take a life or, would freeze in that kind of a situation. You have to mentally think through, what are you prepared to do?
Buster's implicitly saying he doesn't have that problem.
Yeah.
Just so everybody watching knows, Buster's saying, like, look, don't get in my way. I don't have that problem.
Yeah. Look, we're not going to change anybody's moral paradigm.
Right.
We're just saying this so happens
John
to
and
be ours.
John and Steve want to know about flamethrowers, cigars, and sunscreen.
So I personally don't carry cigars, but I have an ample supply back at the house.
That's
And if you have bug spray and a Bic lighter, you have
a flamethrower, right? I don't know. I said flamethrower. A SOG multi-tool, which is what they're recommending, but again, Leatherman or what was yours? Gerber. All good products. And make sure that you've got the tools, especially a screwdriver in there.
And practice with them, because if you need to cut a wire or get your Phillips head out and it's in the flathead mode, you need to know how to change that and get to what you need.
We like tactical flashlight, a heavy-duty flashlight that can really take it, and I like the redundancy of a headset as well, headlamp as well. 50 feet they're recommending of 550 paracord. I would take
minimum 100.
Yeah, as much paracord as you could possibly carry.
And you can use that. And one thing we didn't talk about are needles and things that you could use for stitching. And you can take the inner strands of a 550 and repair a cut or a wound and sew it up yourself.
Zip ties, which yours are just plain old scary, but I really love them. I have little ones to attach things to a pack. I'm going to up my zip tie game.
And we didn't talk about this, and I'll throw it in later, but this is a survival grenade. And it's got a knife, fishing hooks, some antiseptic wipe. It is
wrapped in paracord.
Wrapped in paracord. Just this alone, you could eat for a couple of days near a river and start fires and do some other stuff.
I have that. It's not the same product, but it's not by the same company, but the same product. An emergency shelter of some kind.
Or the ability or knowledge on how to make it.
Make shelter, yeah. Plexiglass mirror for signaling help, or a thermal sleeping bag or cocoon of some kind. I carry I think they're making this same argument. I carry. I try to have everything use AA batteries, and I carry extra AA batteries. And periodically, like it used to be, whenever I changed the batteries in the smoke detectors, I would go and change the batteries in the go bag.
And that's a great point. Is either have it on your calendar for a reminder.
Yep.
Or make that on some anniversary date of your batteries to update all the material that has expiration.
Robin, is it okay if we do that on like our wedding anniversary as a husband-wife romantic activity? Changing the batteries in our go bag tools? She says okay, yeah. Alexa, how about you? The NSA is listening in. Oh, she said sorry.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
She started listening when you said Glock.
We leather work gloves.
Well,
Eye protection,
the ones I was referring to was more knuckle protection and hands.
And palms, yeah.
Now, in climates like ours, I would throw in hand warmers, like I take when I go skiing and things like that. Throw a few of those in there, and the protective goggle. And I like the respirator mask too. I do have it in this bag here. I'm going to have to add it to my other bag. So there you go. Contents of a get-home bag, way more likely by everybody watching to be necessary versus a go bag, because your chances of surviving when you go are pretty remote. And then really start to think about sheltering in place and what else you need in the home, and really think about doing a program for neighbors, which could be weird or awkward, but certainly in the workplace. I mean, I have neighbors watching probably who are now more frightened than ever. I mean, this is just confirming their suspicion.
No, they're like, I'm going to Dave and Leslie's house.
But that's the problem.
That's
is
the issue.
if I don't have enough stuff, I have to eat you then. And cannibalism doesn't always come up. One last thing. When was the last time you watched, like when Buckley, is Buckley still on? He rarely brings cannibalism up.
No.
Rarely. I mean, Greg, you have done it, let's be fair. But this, can you help me hold this up, Sam, so they can see? Because this was a gift from Sergeant Major Tate here. This is the Zombie Apocalypse Kit. It's very heavy on axes and machetes.
Yes,
for obvious reasons that it's for a zombie apocalypse.
So 1, 2, 3,
It's a parang,
4. Well, there's a couple of knives.
couple of knives,
It's
a hatchet.
Made by Gerber.
there's a
Made by
lot
Gerber.
going on here. So
It's not particularly light.
no, it's not. You just
This is
don't
not
carry
something
this
you're going to
around.
carry in your back.
No.
But it is. You can't go too far. And again, this is not just for my neighbor's benefit, but you can't walk too far in this house without encountering a knife or a machete or something. Oh, one final thing. I carry this in all my bags. Now, this one's still in the paper, but I carry WD-40, which ends up being very useful in a host of situations, including, as I think you observed to me, for removing fingerprints.
No, crayon from hardwood.
And crayon
floors.
from hardwood floors, that's
Yes.
right. I might have been the one that said
Fingerprints.
yeah. Leslie, this was a pleasure.
Yeah, it was a great time.
So, listen, everybody.
We had thoroughly scared our audience, apparently.
Did they all just leave?
John said you guys scared the S out of me.
Oh,
Trying
my.
not to lose our family rating.
Yeah, we're keeping the family rating. Yeah, well, it's meant to be scary, not because we really want you to consider cannibalism. We just want you to think about it and to take some measures. And we're trying to make it easier for you, not harder to do it. Buster, well, I thank him all the time. He's an awesome co-host. But we want to thank you for coming all the way from the greater Washington, D.C.
Well,
area.
thank you. I enjoy talking about this. Although
It's not obvious. But
I feel a little bad because I don't practice what I preach in terms of getting my office mates ready. You know,
Yeah.
I haven't really made that a big issue, but now I need to go back.
Oh, I'm going to
It
do
could
it.
be a fun, like now that I'm thinking about it more too, is like a team building type of excursion.
Yeah, help everybody think about their go bags and what
Yeah.
or their,
Well,
you know.
we took a business black ops crew of people who predominantly had never shot a gun before.
Yeah.
And we gave them each a handgun instructor,
Mhm.
and we took them through safety. And some of those folks were very reluctant.
Yeah.
But when they
Actually,
did-
anti-gun people.
Yeah, and by the end, they were shouting very nasty things to me, like, "Hey, B word, get me some more ammo." These were like women CEOs and doctors calling me the B word.
That's right.
It was very harsh. Get me more ammo. So I'm just saying it can be fun and it can be interesting, and when you are prepared in more areas of your life rather than fewer, it takes a weight off your mind, and the quality of life is just better.
Yep.
So thank you, everybody. See you next week. I'm not sure what our topic is, but it's going to be exciting. I'm sure.
Yeah, always.
Thanks, everybody. Be in top form.